We are continuing with the tympanoplasty. So the definition, indication, contraindication, prerequisites and the types were described in part 1 tympanoplasty, and in this class I will explain about the general precautions to be taken during surgery and also the approaches and incisions used for tympanoplasty. So the general tips, approaches and incisions for tympanoplasty will be dealt in this class. The surgeon should be meticulous starting from the arrangement of operation room. And remember, the bad surgeons are made and not born, and also the poor habit will translate into poor results. So as students, you will become consultants in near future, and for the consultant, for establishment of clinics or your own operating room, this is the arrangement of operating room as described by Shambo Jr. This is a table. The most important corner of an OR is a patient's table. So this is a table, and the patient lie on the table facing above, and with the operated ear up. If operating on the left ear, it has to be up, or the face turned away from the surgeon, and the surgeon sits on the side of the operating ear, except in case of middle cranial fossa surgery, where the surgeon sits on this part. Okay. So otherwise the surgeon sit on the side of operating ear. Always convenient to use a chair with backrest rather than sitting on the stool. And this is position of the scrub nurse, and the microscope is kept at the head end of the table, and the scrub nurse with Mayo table, and this is a position of anesthetist in case of general anesthesia, and the TV monitors are kept on the opposite to the surgeon, bed control and also the suction. And on the foot end we keep a place for bipolar cautery, the Bowie and the nerve monitors, and also for the warmer. Ideally the observers should be kept to 2 in numbers, and they should be mummified with clothes, sterile clothes. And this is the ideal position for the observers, so that they can look into the TV monitors of the operating system. The standard surgical textbooks advise to control the foot switch by the surgeon itself, but in case if assistance is needed, you can use the pedal foot with the scrub nurse, except the laser and CUSA. The foot control of laser and CUSA should be operated by the surgeon itself. So this is the ideal operating room settings, and strict aseptic precaution should be observed in case of especially in case of ear surgeries and also in neuro-otological surgeries. Patient preparation is very much important. It starts from the eve of surgery, that is the day before surgery. The patient is advised to clean the scalp and the hair using an antiseptic shampoo, and also to shave the hair. For all surgeries on the ear, the patient is advised to shave 2 finger breadth above and behind the ear to be operated, except for transcanal surgeries. Even then, in transcanal surgery, if you want to take a graft, this has to be shaved to the standard is a 2 finger breadth. It comes to around 1 inch. Sterile, absorbent, self-adhering and barrier drapes are applied to the ear, so that the pinna and also the post-oral area can be opened, keeping the sterile precautions. And if needed, in most of the cases we give an antibiotic prophylaxis or antimicrobial prophylaxis is started the day before surgery. After patient positioning and sterile draping, the next most important one is anesthesia. Okay. We prefer, as ear surgeries are are done under microscope, and also it takes a comparatively longer time, longer duration. General anesthesia, hypotensive anesthesia, hypotensive anesthesia with an orotracheal intubation is preferred, but the neuromuscular blockade should not interfere with the facial nerve monitoring if using, and also the nitrous oxide is a very good anesthetic, but it has a property of going into the surgical field, diffusing into the surgical field, and that may interfere with especially during tympanic membrane graft placement. So that should be remembered. And most of the surgeons prefer local anesthesia with the adequate sedation. Local anesthesia with adequate sedation is preferred by majority nowadays. And the ear surgery should be, especially the micro ear surgery, should be in a completely bloodless field. So along with the 2% lidocaine, 1 in 1 lakh adrenaline, epinephrine is usually used. Okay, so 2% lidocaine with 1 in 1 lakh epinephrine. Okay, is used. This is the nerve supply of ear. Here you can see this is the greater auricular nerve. This one, that is C3. This is the lesser occipital. That is C2 and C3. So the posterior aspect and also the ear lobule area supplied by the greater auricular and also the lesser occipital. And this, which artery is this? This is the superficial temporal artery. Superficial temporal artery. Along with that comes auriculotemporal nerve. Okay. Auriculotemporal. And also the external auditory canal and also this congal area is supplied by auricular branch of vagus nerve. Okay, this one. Auricular branch of vagus. And the posterior aspect, this is this area. This is the posterior aspect supplied by again by the greater auricular. This is a lesser occipital, and one more nerve is supplying the posterior part, that is the posterior auricular branch of facial nerve. Okay. Branch of 7th. So this is a nerve supply. So then the areas of infiltration becomes very easy. You can infiltrate accordingly. Which all areas? The one anteriorly comes here, this point, that is just in front of tragus, and also through the, this is the incisura terminalis, so through the incisura terminalis. Okay. You have to use the smallest size needle, that is usually used one is a 27 gauge. 27, palpate the temporomandibular joint. Just behind that you will get the pulsations of the superficial temporal artery, and keep one finger over the superficial temporal artery, and with a 27 gauge needle poke it vertically downwards, and then always withdraw. Then your needle will be on the auriculotemporal nerve. So you can infiltrate in the auriculotemporal nerve, and here comes the incisura terminalis. You can also inject over the incisura terminalis and also in the congal areas. Here also you can inject. And into the external auditory canal, it is at the bony cartilaginous junction. Okay, this is the bony part and this is a cartilaginous part at the junction at 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So we have to inject at the bony cartilaginous junction at 4 quadrant into the external auditory canal using a 27 gauge needle. And posteriorly, this is the nerve supply. So you can inject multiple points over the posterior aspect, so that the complete local anesthesia will happen, and you have to wait for minimum of 10 to 12 minutes for the anesthesia or local anesthetic to act. The point of injection, one is just anterior to the tragus and also multiple point over the incisura terminalis. 4 quadrant anesthesia at the bony cartilaginous junction of the external auditory canal, multiple points over the concha and also multiple points over the post-oral region using a 27 gauge needle, and it should be injected very slowly. And before injecting, you should know about any history of allergic reaction to the local anesthetic, and also if needed an drug allergy test should be done. Gel form or the cotton, small cotton balls dipped in this adrenaline epinephrine solution alone or with 4% xylocaine with epinephrine solution can be put into the middle ear, because that is an area which become very sensitive on elevating the tympanomeatal flap. So this gel form dipped in epinephrine or a solution of 4% lidocaine with epinephrine can be used as topical anesthetic when you reach the middle ear, and also if there is more bleeding from any area, especially if you inject to this bony cartilaginous junction, there is chance of oozing is more, then also you can apply this epinephrine directly either with gel form or in cotton balls. For tympanoplasty, there are 3 commonly used incisions. The one is a Rosen's incision, that is transcanal. This is lying down position. This is a 12 o'clock and this is 6 o'clock. Right ear in lying position. So the Rosen's incision start from 6 o'clock position from the annulus, that is here it is around 2 millimeters from the annulus, and then it curves, and when it reaches here, this part, that is at the 9 o'clock position, it is around 8 millimeters to 1 centimeter. Then again it goes and reaches up to the lateral process. Again it is 2 millimeter here. Okay, so this is a Rosen's transcanal incision. It starts from 6 o'clock, curves down, and at this point it is around 8 millimeters to 10 millimeters. Then again it goes and reaches a lateral process at the 12 o'clock position. We can use an right angled beaver knife of number 1 size, or also a sickle knife, or a round knife is also preferred. The advantage is that it is easy to perform, and the elevation of the tympanomeatal flap and opening of the middle ear. It is otherwise called a lateral tympanotomy approach. It is comparatively easier, easy to perform, but the disadvantage is that both one hand will be on the speculum. So we have to keep a speculum here, then only this incision can be done. So one hand is always engaged, and it needs some expertise, and there can be chance of bleeding while you elevate the flap. Okay, so that is Rosen's transcanal incision. This is usually used for a ossiculoplasty or a stapedectomy. The commonly used incision for stapedectomy. Okay. And one more disadvantage is that this cannot be extended, the same incision cannot be extended for if you go for a mastoid exploration. Okay. And the second one is William Wild's postoral incision. This is the Wild's incision. Start from the upper attachment of pinna, and this is a postoral groove. So it goes 1 centimeter behind the postoral groove and parallel to the postoral groove up to the tip of mastoid. So from the postoral groove it is around 1 to 1.5 centimeters. Okay. So a postoral William Wild's incision starts from the upper attachment of the pinna, parallel and 1 to 1.5 centimeter posterior to the postoral groove, and it goes up to the tip of mastoid. And that is William Wild's incision. And if you are doing this on a child of less than 2 years of age, the tip of mastoid is not developed in child of less than 2 years of age. So there is chance of this facial nerve directly emerging from the stylomastoid foramen. So this incision is either this can be made more horizontal, or it is like this, or 1 or 2. These are the 2 modifications used in children below 2 years of age. So this William Wild's incision give an excellent exposure, and your both hands are free. That is the advantages. One, both hands are free. There is no need of a speculum holder, and this is easy to perform. Even the starters can do this incision. Excellent exposure is there. Also, well pneumatized mastoid can be approached by this technique, and if the external auditory canal is very much narrow, then also you can use this incision. Okay, so the advantages: one, the less expertise; second, there is no need of speculum, both hands are free; and the third is very good exposure. And even the external auditory canal, narrow even if the external auditory canal is narrow, you can approach that. And also, even if there is scar is a keloid formation, it is cosmetically acceptable, because in the postoral region it is not easily visible. Okay, so these are the advantages. Then comes the Lambert incision, that is an end-oral incision. Actually, Lambert has got 2 parts, Lambert 1 and Lambert 2. In Lambert 1, again this is 12 o'clock and this is 6 o'clock. It starts from 12 o'clock position, goes at the bony cartilaginous junction, reaches at 6 o'clock, and then it has got a downward curve. This is Lambert 1. Okay, at the bony cartilaginous junction. From 12 o'clock through bony cartilaginous junction, it goes up to 6 o'clock, and then it goes perpendicularly down for around 0.5 centimeter, like this. And this is the second part. Second part starts from the 12 o'clock and it goes through the incisura terminalis. Okay, so this is 2 and this is 1. Lambert 1 and Lambert 2. So Lambert 2 start from the 12 o'clock position, it goes through the incisura terminalis. And this Lambert can be combined. This can be extended around the pinna, and this can be combined with a postoral incision. The advantage is that it is going through area where there is no cartilage. Here also it is bony cartilaginous junction, and also in the incisura terminalis there is no cartilage. So there is no cutting of cartilage. Advantages are, if there is a keloid formation, that becomes an ugly scar, and Lambert end-oral incision, the exposure is limited. Only if there is limited exposures like an active cholesteatoma, then only you can do that. Otherwise, you have to combine that with a postoral incision, and expertise, high level of expertise is needed for doing an end-oral incision. So these are the 3 incisions commonly used in a tympanoplasty. Important one is the surgical approaches for tympanoplasty and mastoid exploration. So before going to that, you have to be familiar with the 2 terms. One is annulus. What is this annulus? Towards the periphery, this is a tympanic membrane. So towards the periphery of the tympanic membrane, there is a rim of dense fibrous tissue. Okay, this part, a rim of dense fibrous tissue, and this fibrous tissue fits into the tympanic sulcus of the temporal bone. And this rim of fibrous tissue around the tympanic membrane is called the annulus. So in order to reach the medulla, while you elevate the tympanomeatal flap, you have to elevate the annulus also. This annulus is division superiorly, and this part is called the notch of Revenis. This area. So locating the notch of Revenis will guide the surgeon to get the plane of elevation of the annulus easily. So that is important. And also the vascular strip incision come here between the tympanomastoid and the tympanosquamous suture line. This will be the vascular strip incision. Okay. So with that we can go to the approach. Of the approaches, the one using this transcanal or the Rosen's incision is the permeatal or lateral tympanotomy approach. Tympanum, you know, medulla, otomy, opening. You are making an opening or entry into the medulla from the lateral wall. Lateral wall is a tympanic membrane. So it is a lateral tympanotomy approach or the permeatal approach. The approach is more suitable for surgeries of the tympanic membrane and on the mesotympanum. That is mainly the tympanic membrane perforation or surgeries on the stapes, ossicular reconstruction, perilimb fistula repair, like that. These are the indications. And the prerequisite is that the canal should be wide. The entire tympanic membrane should be visible through the external auditory canal. And one hand of the surgeon will be occupied by holding the speculum. But now there are speculum holders are available, so that both hands can be made free also. Through this incision, you cannot explore the mastoid. If it is tympanoplasty is associated with the mastoidectomy, then this incision cannot be employed. Following an anesthetic and hemostatic solution local infiltration at 4 quadrant at the bony cartilaginous junction and cleaning the external auditory canal with a povidone iodine solution and saline, the incision can be put either with a right angled beaver blade. This is a right angled beaver blade, or you can also use a round knife. And after that, the tympanomeatal flap is elevated, and care should be taken not to injure the tympanomeatal flap, and excessive use of suction on the flap will cause devascularization and perforation. The flap is elevated up to the annulus, and once you reach the annulus, the round knife can be changed to sickle knife, or you can also use a micro instrument elevator. Micro elevator can also be used. And after elevating the annulus, you will identify the chorda tympani nerve, which is generally reflected, and if needed, it can be transected. And if it is causing, if there is a posterior-superior canal wall or the scutum is obstructing the view, forming an overhang, it can be curated with a microcurate, or with a micro drills can be used. And the curating must reveal the entire oval window, the entire stapedius tendon and facial nerve is considered to be adequate. Another approach is the post-oral approach. by post-oral William-Weil's incision. You can reach the middle ear as well as the mastoid. That is the tympanoplasty, and also a mastoid exploration can be done through this approach.
Post-auricular William-Weil's incision follows the post-auricular crease, begins at the top of the auricle, at least 1 cm posterior to the post-aural fold and not in the fold. The incision is deepened, periosteum cut and periosteum elevated, and this can be combined with the mastoid exploration if needed. If not needed, then the dissection is confined to or limited to the posterior canal wall. You can see the elevation of posterior canal skin, and this is the tympanic membrane, and after this the lateral tympanotomy, that is the elevation of the tympanomeatal flap as you did in a transcanal approach.
The third approach is an endoral approach. This endoral approach is suitable for tympanoplasty and also for mastoid exploration, but the mastoid should be limited disease, especially for atticotomy or atticoandrostomy. You can go through this approach. And if you want to reach the tip cells, mastoid tip cells, this endoral approach can be combined with a post-oral approach. And also for hypotympanotomy, for reaching the hypotympanum, this endoral along with the post-oral is an excellent approach. By these three approaches, that is a lateral tympanotomy through the post-oral approach and also through the endoral approach, we are gaining access into the middle ear by elevating the tympanomeatal flap. But in an approach, that is the posterior tympanotomy, this posterior tympanotomy, after doing a cortical mastoidectomy, going through the facial recess and reaching the middle ear, that opening the middle ear through the posterior wall is called the posterior tympanotomy. So for that, this mastoid exploration, doing a cortical mastoidectomy, then identifying the facial recess, and through the facial recess approaching the middle ear, that is a posterior tympanotomy approach. So this approach is mainly done for cochlear implant surgeries and also for sinus tympanic cholesteatomas. And this facial recess and also the sinus tympanic cholesteatoma can be approached through a circumferential tympanomastoid approach also. Fine. This is mainly for the postgraduates. Approach. So for undergraduate, you should at least remember this lateral tympanotomy approach, then post-oral approach, endoral approach, and also the posterior tympanotomy approach. And postgraduate should include the circumferential tympanomastoid approach, that is mainly for the facial recess and sinus tympanic cholesteatoma. So I have explained about the general tips for tympanoplasty surgery, the incisions, mainly the Rosen's transcanal incision, Lombard endoral with the Lombard 1 and 2, and also the William-Weil's post-oral incision. And the approaches are the lateral tympanotomy approach, post-oral approach, endoral approach, posterior tympanotomy approach, and the circumferential tympanomastoid approach, mainly for the sinus tympanic and facial recess cholesteatoma.